Hey, beautiful people of the internet, how are you guys doing today? Hopefully great, and welcome back to another Warframe video. We are of course going to be talking about Volt. If you guys didn't know, he is an electric based frame. He is our electric boy. Now, hence some of my other previews, we are going to be finally going over the build and what makes him so powerful and how you guys can go and replicate it. But before we continue with this video any further, this particular video has been sponsored by Digital Extremes themselves. Huge shout out to them and thank you so much for sponsoring this video, as it would not be possible without them. And as always, thank you so much for this opportunity. Now, as for his abilities, we're not going to be going over Volt's abilities in great detail because he is an old frame. He is quite popular because every time I make a video about Volt, a lot of views do tend to pour in, and I'm not going to be complaining about that. But because of that, we're not going to be going over all of his abilities in great detail. We're mainly going to be talking about the abilities that we are going to be utilizing. So his first ability is called Shock, and all that does is you just hit the enemies with your electric damage, very similar to how Emma's first ability called Fireball works, except this is an electric variant. However, we are going to be using an augment called Shock Trooper, which essentially just goes and engulfs all your weapon in electrical damage. Now, when it comes to electrical damage, we're mainly going to be worrying about our steel, and in that case, our melee weapon. Hence why we are going to be using the Syam. If you guys didn't know, this is my favorite melee weapon. I love katanas, especially the one where you guys can just go and hold down your heavy attack and just start throwing out this projectile. I absolutely do love it. And on top of that, we have replaced Volt's number 4 ability with Nourish. Now, while making this video, I actually was contemplating, I can't remember how to pronounce the word, but I was deciding on whether I should add Nourish or not, mainly because of the fact that I needed range. But we will be using melee influence, which does go and spread your elements based on whatever elements you have on your melee weapon if you guys have Shock Trooper activated. And also, if you didn't know at this point, Nourish is an ability that does go and engulf your steel or any of your melee weapons or any of your primary or secondary weapons with viral. And if you didn't know, viral is a relatively powerful element, and we are also going to be using condition overload, which does further boost everything. So before I move on to any of the builds, I do want to talk to you guys about the Archon shards. If you guys take a look here, you'll see that we've got 4 Crimson Archon shards. However, both of them don't do the exact same thing. 2 of them do ability strength and the other 2 do critical melee damage. I highly recommend you guys can either go and add more melee critical damage, or if possible, go and add the Archon shards that give you more corrosive damage on your weapons. I highly recommend you guys go in either one of the 2. I don't really recommend ability strength, as I don't think the boost is quite enough considering how there are better options out there. But I'm just telling you guys how I think you guys should mod, because at the end of the day, this is your game, your hand. You guys should go and mod to your heart's content. Now, I also do want to talk about our primary and secondary weapons. It doesn't matter what your primary and secondary weapon is, it literally can be anything. However, the most important thing is the Arcanes, as these are vessels to go and hold certain Arcanes. I'm mostly referring to primary dexterity and secondary dexterity. Both of these Arcanes actually offer us even more combo duration. If you guys go and do some basic math, it'll give us 15 seconds extra combo duration. If we go and look at the statistics of the Syam, you'll see that we are going to be having 20 seconds of combo duration, which is very good, and it's also enough time for us to sustain our combo duration. That's assuming that you can always control when you guys decide to go and do your heavy attacks. Now, as for the build, we are going to be showing you guys 3 different builds. One is for Volt, one is for the Syam, and of course we are going to be using our companion. As for the build for Volt, as you guys can tell, we haven't added any Forma. However, I am debating on whether we should call this an episode budget build. I don't know what to tell you guys, because we do have some Forma on our favorite melee weapon, that being the Syam, because you guys know I am a big fan of anime. Now, as for the build, as you guys can tell, we are going to be prioritizing a lot of strength, having no range, having a neutral amount of efficiency, and of course some duration. As for the mods, we are going to be going with the following: Steel Charge for more melee damage, mainly because of the fact that I would like to have more mod capacity. Power Drift, Blind Rage, and of course August Secrets for even more power strength. The more power strength you guys have, the more potent Shock Trooper will be. And if you didn't know, Shock Trooper just allows you to go and engulf your melee weapon with electricity, in this case your steel. Now, as for the next mod, we have Fleeting Expertise, which will give us a lot more energy efficiency. Now this just helps out with our energy usage, therefore we don't get caught with our pants down. Flow actually goes and synergizes with flow, well, with energy efficiency, just so that we've got a much bigger energy pool. Remember, we do not want to get caught with our pants down. Now that's where Nourish does come into play. Nourish just goes and engulfs a lot of our steel or a lot of our weapons with viral, and on top of that it does drop energy, so therefore we won't really have too much of an energy problem. But that's entirely up to you guys if you want to go and add fleeting expertise or take it out. Once again, it's entirely up to you guys. If you want, you guys can just always just go and add more duration or strength and just drop this particular mod. Prime continuity and narrow miner to go and add even more duration. And finally, adaptation to make sure that we don't get killed while we are busy fighting in combat. Because remember, we have to go and get up close and personal. But because of all the CC with electrical damage and because we're going to be absolutely murderizing everybody, adaptation will still come into play. So like I said, with fleeting expertise, you guys can either add more survivability like rolling guard. You guys can go and add, more strength, more duration. It's entirely up to you guys. I just like to make sure that I don't get hit with any energy issues while in combat. Now, as the Arcane's department, we are going to be running around with Arcane Fury, which gives us even more melee damage if we decide to go and crit. Molt Augmented to give us even more power strength for every kill we go and get. By killing 250 enemies, we are going to be getting an additional 60% power strength, which will give us a whopping 310-ish percent, 309%, somewhere around there. Once again, the more power strength, the more effective Shock Trooper is going to be. Another thing I do want to mention is that speed does get based off of more power strength. So once again, the more power strength you guys have, the faster or the higher the speed multiplier is going to be, which is going to allow us to absolutely shred the enemies relatively quick. Because remember, speed and DPS does go and flow with one another. So this is our build for the Syam. As you guys can tell, we currently have 3 Forma invested, and the exact polarities I decided to go and add are 3 Vs. One for pressure point, one for condition overload, and either one for blood rush or one for galvanized steel. I believe it's probably for galvanized steel. I can't remember off the top of my head, but essentially those are the 3 elements or the 3 polarities I decided to go and add. Now, as for the build, we are going to be using the following mods. Decisive Judgment for our stance. Once again, this doesn't really matter. You just have to make sure that you do have a stance. Therefore, you have a much bigger mod capacity to play with. Next up is, because we are going to be learning the arts of Tennokai, we decided to go and add Disciples Merit, which allows me to have free heavy hits after 4 melee attacks, which is very, very, very effective instead of it being random. Next up is, we are going to be using Prime Pressure Point and Condition Overload for our base damage. The same thing can be said with Killing Blow, because remember, we also do want to go and utilize the passive or the unique trait for the Syam, because remember, if you guys go and do a heavy attack, you'll then go and throw out this projectile. Remember, you guys can just feel free to pause the video and read what the unique trait does, but essentially the shockwave just goes and deals heat damage by default, which can be modified based on whatever element you guys decide to go and add. So once again, Killing Blow is optional. It's up to you. You guys can either have more critical damage, but I recommend Killing Blow, as I have noticed it seems to be dealing a lot more damage. I'm not too sure on that, but really it's entirely up to you. This build is relatively flexible. Like I said, when it comes to elements, we've decided to go and add gas damage. So that's going to be heat and toxin, which does create that particular element. Gas damage does go and do this AoE. We are also going to be using galvanized elementalist, which gives us even more status damage. By default, around 80% if you guys decide to go and have a rank 10 one. And if you guys go and kill 4 enemies, you're going to have even more status chance, which is going to last for 20 seconds, which is relatively useful. And next up is, we are going to be using Blood Rush and Galvanized Steel for our crits. Blood Rush gives us more critical chance for every multiplier we currently have. Galvanized Steel is going to give us even more critical chance, and every time we decide to go and kill an enemy, it's going to give us 120% additional critical damage multiplier. So like I said, Killing Blow, it's entirely up to you. If you guys like to go and add Organ Shatter, you're going to be having a large critical damage multiplier. However, I don't think the critical damage multiplier is worth using, as I have seen some videos, I remember especially in the past, where this guy had like this ribbon for crit chance, crit damage, and based on the knowledge that I remember from that video, crit damage doesn't necessarily mean more damage. compared to more base damage, but it's really up to you. And I know I'm probably going to get those schmucks in my comment section saying that how I should go and add smite, more damage to a particular faction instead of adding prime pressure point. That's entirely up to you guys. I don't really like to go and use faction damage, because every time I go and fight an enemy, I don't want to keep changing to this particular mod, even though it's pretty useful, but it's entirely up to you guys. Faction damage multipliers, I have heard, are relatively powerful, but you guys know me, I am lazy. I don't like going into builds, continue just changing everything. As for the Arcane's department, we are going to be using melee influence. If you guys didn't know, on electrical status effects, this has a chance to go and proc elemental effects on your melee weapon onto an 18-meter radius for 15 seconds. However, it does not refresh, but don't worry about that. If you guys want to know the maximum effect of it, it's going to be 20 meters, which is going to last for even longer. So once again, by default, if we do an activate shock trooper, it's then going to go and spread all of our elements onto our melee weapon. That's where nourish comes into play. That's where gas comes into play, because remember, gas already is an AoE effect. This particular arcane is going to make it even more AoE. Therefore, it's going to allow us to go and nuke the entire room just by the swing of our sword. Whether we go and hit the enemies with our regular attacks or with our quote-unquote Getchuka Tencho, it's entirely up to your particular playstyle. And especially if you guys go and activate Tennokai, then it's going to be even more potent. Once again, you have a choice, either regular melee slashes, or you guys can go and hit a heavy Getchuka Tencho attack onto the enemies. As for our companion, I don't really think there is much of a difference, so I decided to just go and add carrier just to go and switch things up. And of course, we are going to be using the Hellstrom. So for our build for the carrier, essentially we're just going to be adding a whole bunch of brand new mods which will allow us to not only heal ourselves, but also it's going to allow us to go and proc the enemies with multiple status effects. So as you guys can tell, I'm just going to hover over all these mods, therefore you guys can go and just pause the video and see. But basically what I'm doing is I'm allowing carrier to just start attacking the enemies, sucking up all the extra loot, whether that being life support, start attacking the enemies immediately. And once I go and kill an enemy, then it should just go and start hitting the enemies with even more random status effects. And because we're using condition overload, this is going to equal even more damage on top of everything. Even though when I do remember when condition overload did get this rework, I think there was a cap to it, but when I looked at Warframe Wiki, I didn't really see anything about it. But essentially, this is the build for my carrier or my companion. I am still working out the kinks to it. I am still tweaking it, even though I did hear that recently the companions did go and receive some sort of rework. I don't know, but this is what I am going to be rolling around with. We are going to be using the Hellstrom, which is a very good weapon when it comes to proccing the enemies with certain elements. In this case, the Hellstrom is being modded for both viral and radiation, and on top of that we are going to be increasing our status damage. These are our mods. We've got hammer shot, we've got radiated reload, cryo round, galvanized amplitude, and magnet force. And if you guys look at our stage chance, we almost have 100%. However, if you guys decide to go and add Forma, then you'll have a very, very, very high chance of proccing every single element in one singular case. Because remember, if you guys go and have stage chance that's above 100%, then you'll be able to go and proc multiple elements in one single hit, which is even better when it comes to priming the enemies. If you guys really want, you guys can just go and take out galvanized amplitude. I don't think you guys will be dealing that much damage, but what I can recommend is you guys can just go and add a mod called, I believe it's called rifle amplitude, which gives you 90% stage chance, so you don't even have to worry about your carrier actually going and killing the enemies. Therefore you guys will just have this relatively high stage chance. But if you want, you can just add another Forma or two and just add rifle amplitude, and you can always have galvanized amplitude, just so that you can always have constant elements on that particular enemy. So welcome to the simulacrum. This is where I'll show you guys exactly how this particular loadout does perform. So what you want to do is activate your shock trooper, that being your first ability. Activate your speed because we want to increase our swing speed. And if you guys really want, you can go and activate your shield and then pick it up and then start meleeing or heavy attacking through it. It will add more damage, but I don't want to complicate the build any further, as I like to go and simplify things. So once again, make sure the first and second ability and nourish is activated. Therefore you guys can deal the most amount of damage. Pick up your energy just because I have OCD. And then what you want to do is start meleeing the enemies like so. Doing so, you'll be able to just simply eliminate them with gas damage, and because we've got so many different elements attacking them or affecting them, you'll absolutely just one-shot them. And just note, those are the Eximus units. And I also do want to say we didn't have all of our stacks up to 100%. Ladies and gentlemen, I make some pretty awesome Warframe content, so if you guys like to go from 0 to hero as fast as humanly possible, I highly recommend you guys go ahead and take a look at the rest of my videos. There will be some links down in the description, and of course there will be some of them suggested to you guys at the top right, either the top left, either the top right. I can't exactly remember where YouTube decides to go and put these things. Do remember to leave a like on this video. It always helps me out substantially. I'm trying to do YouTube full time. Spartan, click the subscribe button for more Warframe videos and streams. I make like a banana and split. See you guys in the next Warframe video. I'm out. Peace.